Hello and welcome everyone to the Make We Talk About the Environment show. Make We Talk About the Environment is a Sierra Leonean Creole sentence, meaning let us talk about the environment. On behalf of Sierra Leone Environment Matters, we're excited to have you here with us, and thanks for joining us. My name is John Kamarareid. I'm from Sierra Leone, and I'm happy to be here to talk to our next guest on the show. Make We Talk About the Environment is a bi-monthly short 30-minute sessions designed to provide young people access to stories of people like them who are passionate about the environment, citizen science, and have worked or are working in the space of conservation. Our hope is that this show allows young Sierra Leoneans to hear stories of people who are playing their part, whether big or small, to protect nature in their communities, in their field of study, or maybe at a national or international level. And for young people to draw inspiration and encouragement from those stories and from those experiences. Today, we'll be talking with Nathan Roberts about his experiences from working as a volunteer with environmental groups in the United Kingdom, also about his study and his research work in China. And he'll be also sharing a little bit with us about what he's currently involved with. Welcome, Nathan, and thanks for joining us today. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and I guess our audience will want to know who Nathan is.
Okay, hi, John, and hello, everyone joining us in this program. Firstly, thank you so much for the invitation. Really happy to be here and to be part of this wonderful program. And as you mentioned, my name is Nathan. I'm from the UK, and I'm now here in China, where I'm involved with the tiger. So I actually studied tiger and the leopard and that community in the forest, involved in conservation and research. Now, in terms of the sort of background, I think many of the people watching this show and this program or listening will be youth. And so I'd like to begin the story sort of where I was at when I was sort of a teenager. And so if you think about when I was sort of 16, 17, 18 like this, I was involved as a volunteer at a wildlife and rescue and rehabilitation center. And a rehabilitation is basically just an animal might be sick or injured or involved in some kind of accident. And we would just nurse that animal back to good health, take care of it, and then release it back into nature, back into the wild. And at that time, it was around 2006, 2007 that I was involved. And there was a really terrible accident of an oil spill. There was a cargo ship that had an incident, and there was literally tons of oil that spilt into the sea. It was into the English Channel. And so all that oil, if we've done our science lesson, we'll know that the oil just sits on top of the water. They don't mix. So the oil is just on the top of this water. And other things that are on top of the water are seabirds. Seabirds often flying around and diving into the water to get their fish. But when they're sitting on top of the water, they're now mixing with that oil. And so these birds were literally covered in oil. And you know, that's causing real health problems. And some animals would actually die from this, which is pretty horrendous. And so we literally had hundreds of these birds come into us, rescued, and they came into our center. And we actually had to clean them. You know, some people clean the dishes, some people clean their car, but literally we were there cleaning birds with washing up liquid, you know, just cleaning these birds and taking care of them and then releasing them back into the wild, which was quite incredible, really. As I say, we successfully released several hundred of these birds. And at that time, I was also at college. I was also studying for animal care, animal management, and at that time, this is where conservation and climate change, these subjects kind of made a bit of an appearance. And at that time, also that famous film, The Inconvenient Truth. And I think many people watching this have maybe seen that film also with Al Gore. It was like a presentation from Al Gore about climate change. And it was at that time that film came out, and it was really my friend's kind of thing, really, the whole climate change thing. And I thought, it's a bit abstract, it's a little bit in the future, it's a little bit distant. and maybe it's not so serious. It's just the polar bear on the ice cap, you know. But I'll still do my bit. I'll turn off the electric. I'll save a bit of electric. Turn out the light. Don't waste electric, and problem solved. That'll be fine. But clearly, climate change is a bit of a different story now. We can see people all over the world are affected by this, and it's intensifying. So it's seriously a big issue just now. And after college, I was then involved in university. I went to university to study animal conservation, conservation science, learning about plants and animals and how they interact. And this interaction, we can often call it ecology. Ecology is just interaction between different living things. And during that time, we're actually really fortunate. We had opportunity to go to West Africa, actually not that far along from Sierra Leone. We're up in the Gambia, and we're out in some forest just there, and I was able to study the local wildlife. And what an amazing place. The animals of West Africa are just amazing. And yeah, I was really, really grateful for that opportunity to go there. So I've got a bit of experience in Africa, also in South America, and also in Asia. And in South America, it was actually my job to work with volunteers. Volunteers were typically 18 to 25, that sort of age bracket. And we were doing wildlife surveys every day. And some of that wildlife was marine turtles. We're also studying monkeys, the primates, also butterflies, otters, so many different things. I've also been involved with zoos for about 4 years or so, working in education, schools, colleges, and universities. And linking the curriculum with learning about nature. And now really that sort of brings us up to date with where I'm at now, here in China, where I study tigers. So that's a bit of the background and how I got to where I am now.
Oh, what a wonderful and really cool story. You've pretty much really moved around quite a few, and you've been exposed to really different experiences as well. And I think one of the things that stood out to me is just how at a very early stage in your life, you already were thinking around what I can do to help, like what I can do in my little way to help. And you've put yourself out there, volunteer a bunch of environmental groups, making your little steps in your own little ways, you know. And it's quite interesting when you talk about you being that in your own little bubble, thinking, oh, climate change, you know, I just have to switch up my light and I'm making my own little impact. And then as you grow, you actually realize that, hey, this is actually a way bigger problem. It's not just about me switching off my electricity, but it might probably also require me actually thinking about, you know, other ways and how we can all come together as a global village to solve this massive issue that is going to become one of the biggest problems in our generation. Well, I'm quite impressed with your experiences. I wish you could have probably made it to Sierra Leone. I think Sierra Leoneans would have been quite happy to have you there. It begs me to ask the next question about, you know, I'm just listening to your stories. You come across as somebody who's really passionate about the environment. What does conservation mean to you personally and professionally? The idea of conservation.
Yeah, what a great question. What is conservation? And also, I like the idea of that framing as to what is it personally and what is it kind of professionally as well. So what I'd like to do is just split that into two parts, really, I think. And I think when we talk about personally, I think, yeah, conservation is a very personal thing. It means a lot of things to a lot of people. And to me, I think when I think about conservation, I think about friends. I think about spending time together. I think about something very productive, something proactive, very active. I think about also learning, understanding. I think it's also about compassion. It's also experiences and kind of new adventures as well, new opportunities. And why do I say this and sort of what do I mean? Well, I think, yeah, conservation is a very active word. And so if I'm thinking about something active like planting trees, for example, when I'm thinking about tree planting, I'm thinking about spending time with people. I'm thinking about enjoying myself. I'm having fun. I'm being productive, and I'm doing something that has a good impact on the environment. And why do I think about compassion? Well, I don't know if you can see, but behind me, I've got a plant in my room. And when I first got that plant, it was only a little thing. It was only about sort of this size, you know, and I put him on the windowsill. And yeah, it was looking good. And I like to keep the window open. So we had plenty of fresh air and sunlight. But then winter came. right? And this plant really wasn't looking so good. It got very, very cold, and this plant suddenly was losing all its leaves. It just became so dry. I thought, game over. Like this plant has had it. So I brought him inside. I gave him a hot drink, you know, a bit like we would if we got a bit of a fever, you know. So I gave it a bit of a hot drink, a bit of TLC. And actually, I started to learn a little bit more about what the plant needs. It really was quite sensitive to temperature. And what this actually made me think about, I mean, look at it now. It's really, really healthy. And so it's really come back. So what this actually taught me, not only about the plant itself and what the plant needs, but I think it also taught me an important lesson about resilience. And not only how resilient that plant is, but how resilient we are as people. And, you know, sometimes we get knocked down or we feel a little bit low. And I think in the case of that plant, I think it almost died. But it's so strong now, and it has leaves all year round. And I think conservation, it's really about building that connection with nature and with other people, and understanding how actually we are part of nature as well. I mean, biologically, we're about the same. I mean, I don't like the winter so much either. You know, I've got to take care of myself. And sometimes I feel a bit low, and then I bounce back. And I think that's how the connection with nature is so important. And I think professionally, we can probably define conservation as a protection thing. It's also restoration, it's management, and it's about sustainable use. And I think conservation as a practice, it is a very practical thing. It is a science. And I think it's about taking our understanding, our knowledge, and our appreciation, and applying that to provide solutions, or to make the world a better place. And in the case of the present time, it's about restoring nature. And I think when we think about something like climate change that we talk about, is now such a serious thing affecting people all over the world. I think nature is part of the solution. And especially like when we go to class, we learn about photosynthesis. Difficult word to say, but we know what it is. Photosynthesis. It's basically when the plant can take carbon from the atmosphere, carbon dioxide. And when you think about climate change as a greenhouse gas problem, as a gas problem, it's really clear to see how nature can be part of that solution. And I think also another example of what conservation is and what it can be as a profession, it can also be like a consultant, like a bit of an advisor. So for example, we want to build something, maybe it's a house, maybe it's a school, maybe it's a community building, and that might have an impact on the environment. You know, it might change, we might need to clear some land to do that, or maybe there'll be some pollution aspects that we need to think about. And so it's really useful as a practical thing for conservationists and environmentalists to think, what's the impact and how do we minimize that? And how do we finally have a very positive result? So maybe having some green space within that school to attract wildlife back to the area. So it is a very practical science, conservation. And I think it's certainly the time is now to apply that knowledge to restore nature and to combat climate change.
Oh, thank you so much for that answer, Nathan. I think when I just listened to your answer just now, I was already quite inspired, and I hope our audience there, especially young people who are thinking about, okay, which career do I want to look at? Like where should I go next in my career? What kind of study I should choose? I hope this will be really useful to you as well in terms of helping you to make a decision. I feel like there's so much opportunities and so many things to help to solve around the world today, especially with regards to conservation, just like what Nathan has already explained to us. And I think the more the merrier, the more conservationists we have, the better world we're gonna end up with. Well, thank you so much for that answer again, Nathan. That takes me to the next question that I have for you today. Your journey, Nathan, took you to China. Tell us more about your experiences studying in China and about your research work as well.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So in China. So I'm up here in the Northeast China, where, like I say, it gets pretty cold. We're sort of talking about -20, -30 in the winter, as degrees Celsius. It's pretty cold. So not only do the plants need to be pretty resilient, but also the people, I'd also think about those poor animals in the forest, minus 30 walking around in the forest. I can't be pleasant. But yeah, the snow itself, in the winter, we get quite heavy snow. So the snow is actually really useful for us, so we can track these animals. We can track tigers, we can track leopards, and we can track other wildlife. And tracking, basically looking for footprints in the snow, so we can do our surveys and do our research. So initially, I actually came to China to do a master's. There's a master's degree in wildlife conservation. And a big focus of that has been on the research aspect. And so I came to a forestry university. And so what I was looking at was how the forest environment, so the trees in the forest and the large herbivores, like the deer, like the wild pig, the wild boar, how these interact. So we talked about what ecology is. So it's an ecology study of the relationship between the plants and animals. And also the main aspect is really about how people use the forest to raise their livestock. Here people are raising cattle. So they put the cattle into the forest. And we think, oh, cattle, they're not really a wild animal. So hang on, surely that's going to have some effect on wildlife. It's going to be having some disturbance. It's a big problem for the vegetation and for the wildlife. And so, of course, the question is really, how much does the cow change the vegetation? I mean, up here we haven't got elephant, we haven't got rhino. So the cow is probably one of the largest animals that exist in our area. So they're big and they eat a lot of plants. And how does that ultimately affect the wild animals? And so why is this really important? I mean, I think most people joining us on this call, joining in with the program, watching or listening, probably know that tigers are really not that common. They're actually an endangered species. They're quite rare. And one reason they're so few is there's just so few prey animals. They haven't got enough food, basically. And some of that food animal would be the deer and the wild boar, the wild pig. And so the idea is that we want to restore these animals so there's plenty of food, and then ultimately there'll be plenty of tigers again. And so ideally we can build up a very healthy ecosystem, plenty of plants, plenty of prey animals, and plenty of carnivores, so the large predators as well. And that ecosystem then becomes very healthy, very intact, very strong. So in terms of the result of what that research came out, of course, cows do affect the vegetation. They didn't, they were eating a lot of food. But it was also about how many cows. Because, of course, if you have so many cows, you're going to wreck the place. You're going to destroy the place. But there was actually a really interesting thing here that where we found quite a certain positive effect. So the cows did change the vegetation. They were eating some things, but it actually also meant that kind of structure changed. So when they ate all the stuff on the ground, the trees didn't have to compete with the other plants for the water and the nutrients. So the trees actually grew bigger. So it's actually quite a positive thing for the trees. And that actually then had an effect on the wild animals. And so that the deer actually really liked that environment with the cow effect. And there was also a direct link between the number of cows and the number of wild boar. And then the really super interesting thing is now when you start to think about this and you think, well, hang on, we've got this, we're fixed on this idea that the cow is domestic and we want to protect wildlife, so that doesn't really work. But of course, the cow is just a domestic animal, the same as the pig is just domestic of a wild pig, and the dog is just a domestic of the wolf. It's pretty much how it all works. And so actually the wild cow is now an extinct species. That's now extinct. So maybe the forest is missing this important link, this important species, and maybe the cow, the modern domestic cow, is providing that service. Now, I could talk about this for quite a long time, but if anyone's interested in the results, I can certainly share the results with other people. And a few of the other things briefly about what I've been doing in China, involved in collaborations. One of those was about Sierra Leone, actually. I was working with a friend about fish access So if you go down to the markets at Tombo, Kissy, Dockyard, Godrich, if you go down to these dockyards and these marketplaces, it's about the fish access, and there's really a solutions focus about the situation in those marketplaces, and we're talking about sustainability and reducing poverty and hunger within Sierra Leone. And again, if people are interested in that work, we can certainly share those results. And then briefly, the PhD. I've just started a PhD, early days, but if you're interested, we can keep in touch about what's going on with that. But it's about the total ecosystem and tigers.
I love it. Yeah, just when you're talking about your involvement in the research about tigers, just really sound really amazing. Like being out there, I can just imagine in my head being out there. Obviously, it's very cold. You said you guys obviously depend on the snow to be able to do your research. It's quite an interesting way to actually study about tigers and all these wild animals in the forest. I guess this is around in the Northeast, probably the border with Siberia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that snow can be that useful for such a purpose, isn't it? And the research work that you explained to us also sounds very specialist as well. I was just going to ask you, for people who might be interested in maybe doing their own local, kind of data collection or research in their local communities or even school children, how can people from these demographics, like people in schools or maybe from local communities, use research to learn more about maybe nature in their local community? I don't know if you have any piece of advice or something useful that you could share with them, for people who our audience who might be listening and who are quite interested in maybe learning about their local nature.
Yeah, cool, definitely. I think anyone can do research. Anyone can look out the window and see what animals they've got and just start to pay attention and to sort of write that down and maybe to monitor that, and maybe that can also be part of a bigger project. And I think this is kind of where we're talking about the idea of citizen science and that idea of people getting involved in research, in meaningful research, and often quite big research when it all comes together as one larger project. And just to give a nice example, I've worked with schools for a few years, and this research can also link so closely with the curriculum. So if there's any teachers also watching this, it's really, really good to link the curriculum of what the students need to learn, like in the classroom, with what's going on outdoors. And actually the outdoors is a fantastic classroom. We can learn about nature at the same time as meeting our curriculum goals for language, math, science, and other subjects. And so just to give a really good example, there's one thing that I really, really enjoy doing. It's called pond dipping. I don't know if you've come across pond dipping before. And basically pond dipping, so we know what a pond is. It's just like a small lake, just a patch of water, right? Mm-hmm. And so pond dipping is basically you take a net and you just start scooping around in water, and then you put that into like a bucket, right? And in that bucket you've got some water, because you have just caught stuff in your net. You don't want to kill that stuff, so then you put it into your bucket and then take your net out, and all these little creatures are all swimming about in your bucket. And then what you need to do is then you can then identify them because they're so close. You can look, and if you want magnifying glass, you can have a really good look at them. And then you just start to have a look and see what you found, and we can identify. And I think most people watching this video or listening to it can probably recognize a few animals and start to classify them. I mean, snails, I think most people can probably recognize a snail. The nice crunchy on the outside, smooth on the inside. No, it's it's got the shell on the outside and the little wriggly bit. So yeah, snails, I think most people can recognize those. So if you see one, you can just write it down, give it like a tick. And then maybe you find some beetles with a little mouth like this. They're little predators, they eat other stuff. Predators, little beetles, they're really cool. So you might see some of those. Start writing that down. And also dragonflies and damselflies. These might be things that people have seen, but maybe not quite sure what they are. These are just absolutely amazing. They look like the kind of thing from Jurassic Park, These amazing dragonflies and damselflies. and you'll often see the adults flying around. But actually their youngsters are actually in the water. So the larvae are in the water. And again, if we're thinking about curriculum, we often learn about life cycle. Like we learn about the frogs and the eggs and the frog spawn, and then the adult frogs and how they use the water for part of the life cycle and then the land for another part. And so we can think about that. So in your bucket, you might have found the little larva of your dragonfly and damselfly. And now the really, really cool thing happens, because now what you can do is you can now figure out how healthy your water is based on what you found, right? So if you found some snails and you only found snails, your water's probably not that good quality. I mean, snails are not fussy, they'll go anywhere, and probably they'll be in the dirty water, right? But if you found the beetles with the mouth like this, you know, it's pretty good. It's kind of a mid-level, you know, your water's probably mid-level. But if you found the dragonflies and the damselflies and you found their little larvae, you're probably onto something pretty good. You're onto a pretty healthy pond. And I've run this session for a long time now, and it's always a lot of fun. And actually, there's a few other activities that can go together with this as a larger session on water quality. And the real idea is that you can then start to collect lots of data, and you can do this every month, for example, or every year, and start monitoring your local environment. And you can also link this up with university institutions or organizations. And just a couple of other brief things is also involved in plastic and plastic pollution and beach cleans. I go down to the beach in the UK and I can clean up the beach. And again, same thing. What have I seen? How many? And I write this stuff down. And we link this up with an organization. It's Marine Conservation Society for anyone on this call. They can have a look. And we actually use this data to influence national policy. It's pretty amazing. Just writing down plastic bottle 6. All this data can influence national policy. And we've actually managed to reduce the amount of plastic pollution in our environment because of this data. It's such a powerful thing. And finally, like I say, we can look out the window and write down what animals we see and just paying attention to that. So what birds we see, what butterflies. We can do this as regular monitoring. Anyone can do this at school or in your community. Citizen science. Yeah, I could talk about it for a long time. It's great stuff.
I love it. It's pretty cool. I think it's definitely something I would love to suggest to the Australian Environment Matters teaching team, the team that goes out to like teach programs in schools. I feel like it could be such a really cool hands-on activity for students. Yeah. And kids will be quite excited about it actually, you know, getting out there, taking their own nets, dipping it into all these ponds and trying to identify these different little creatures that are in their waters. And it's so interesting as well how you can determine which water is healthy versus which one is not healthy, just by the amount the different animals that you find in the different, you know, in your different waters. Like that's quite interesting. I've never thought about it that way. It's definitely a cool way to identify and know which waters are pretty good. As you said, some organisms tend to be quite, you know, choosy about where they want to be, you know. So it's quite interesting. I think it's going to be, it's something definitely that young people will be, student in Sierra Leone will find really interesting to be involved with, to be engaged with. Well, I really love that perspective that you share with us, Nathan. And I know you said before, when you were young, this has always been on your mind around issues around the climate, issues around the environment, and how you can be involved. And you've been doing all these amazing things, even from you being a volunteer to now working in research and helping to get critical data out there to people who are interested in knowing about, for example, tigers, or in trying to help, for example, Sierra Leone, which is where I'm from, working with one of my mate from Sierra Leone around sustainable fish farming or fishery. I think, you've done all these amazing things. And I know also from our conversation earlier on, this was not on the show, obviously, but in our conversation, one-to-one conservation, you did mention that you are working on an organization or a group called Why Conserve. I thought the name itself is quite interesting, and I was keen to ask you today on the show. yeah, why did you choose that name? And can you tell us more about what is the main idea of this environmental movement that you're trying to work on, and how did you come up with the name? Like I just said.
Cool. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Why conserve? Why conserve nature? Why bother? It's basically as simple as that. And like you say, it's currently an idea, and it's actually a very, very simple idea. And I think if we were to put it into sort of a one sentence, like a tagline or strapline like this, I think we could probably say that Why Conserve is about learning about nature and getting involved. And I think this really identifies how, like, very clearly what the aims are and what it's about. And so I think if we just split it into those two parts, firstly, learning. In this conversation today, we've talked about what conservation is and what it means to different people. And we said that it's about connection with the environment. It's also very positive, and it's also very proactive. And so one of those things when we learn about nature, let me just use an example about plants and animals and how these are linked. You know, plants, well, we eat plants, right? We eat rice, we eat potatoes, we eat cassava. We eat beans, right? Yeah. We love this stuff. Okay, and we eat fruits and vegetables as well. So all of these things, they're all plants, right? Yeah. And most of the crops around the world actually need animals in order to be able to grow food. I think it's about 75% of food depends on animals, like food production. That's massive. And like how like what's the link? Yeah. The link is pollination. And often when we think about pollination, maybe we've done this a little bit in school also, we think about bees, and bees are really, really important for pollination. You know, if we didn't have bees, we'd have real problems, you know. So we probably shouldn't be killing them, you know, probably shouldn't be spraying them. But there's also really other important pollinators as well, like the birds, also bats. Bats can be pollinators, butterflies, or even the little beetles as well. So yeah, we probably shouldn't be crushing them. These animals are actually making our food for us. And so by learning about nature and how things actually work, and how it all, like the connections between the environment and also the connection between that and us, I think that's really what the learning is about. And thinking about, why is nature relevant to me? Well, in that simple example, we need the insect because we want to eat. That's why nature is relevant to me. And one of the aspects of the Why Conserve website, which is whyconserve.com, nice and simple, is to provide a resources page. So anyone who's interested in certain topics can go there and they can find some resources that are useful, that I found particularly useful, or that other people have recommended. And the idea is that we can slowly build up like a library of resources. And then the other aspect of it is about the actions. Like we say, conservation is very action focused. And we've been involved in several different projects. One of them is about volunteering. Really passionate about volunteering, as you know. And so the first major project is about volunteering and making it more accessible, so more people can get involved all around the country. And I did this for Scotland in the UK. Another project that we're involved with was a competition. It's a kids competition about art and poetry, to think about nature and to get creative. And actually we got creative at one point as well. We created a song. We wrote a song about plastics and the marine environment. Wow. I'm not a real musician, you know, but nonetheless, this song was played on BBC Radio. Couldn't believe it. And then this song was actually picked up by a young musician. A young musician learnt the words and wrote their own acoustic cover version. Which is like so cool. And then, so basically, if there's anyone watching this video, there's so many ways to interact. And the idea of Why Conserve is to be a very interactive platform. So you can actually go to the website and you can learn the lyrics, and then you can submit your own cover version. It'd be really, really cool to see your own cover version of this song about plastics and nature. And there's another aspect on there about action stories. So if anyone on this call, watching this video, listening, has done something in their community they're really proud of, we can actually share those stories up online and inspire and encourage other people. And of course, get some likes, get some shares, and it's also a positive environment. And then finally, you're just asking about the name. Yeah, it's so simple. Why Conserve? Like, why bother? And just to end with a really simple example, trees. You know, trees, why conserve trees? Maybe we can give some thought about that. Trees actually give us protection. And if we think about storms, we've got lots of rain, we've got lots of wind. And if we haven't got any trees, we can often have really severe mudslides, landslides, and these are really dangerous. And we can see that the areas that have the trees, it's actually a much safer environment. The trees actually give us protection. And also for the wind, I mean, if you haven't got any trees, the wind will just come through and literally take the roof off your house. This is really not a good thing. So trees actually provide us with protection. So why conserve trees? Well, trees keep us safe.
Awesome. That's such a beautiful way to just end that whole explanation. And I love it. I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, a lot of Sierra Leoneans who are watching this show and who are watching you share this with us today will definitely relate to the last part that you just shared with us about the importance of trees, because in 2017, we had a massive monster in Freetown that actually took the lives of so many people and destroyed a lot of property. And that was because of clearing of the forest. In a patch of hill of mountain that's around the Freetown Peninsula. So a lot of Sierra Leoneans would definitely relate to what you just shared with us about the importance of trees, and that's why we all need to put hands together in all little ways to definitely protect our environment. I really love the idea of you know, the movement that you're setting up. It's gonna be, you said it's like a resource hub. So pretty much, regardless of where you are, you can actually access information and help, you know, on different ideas or things that you're interested in. And I love the creativity aspect as well to it. I'm not too good at singing, but probably maybe I might jump on the challenge, because I feel like it's a cool challenge. And I want to encourage other people who are listening to this interview as well to look up Nathan's group, environmental group, Why Conserve, and probably have a go at you never know, have a go at the challenge. And also there's a bunch of other resources that could be as well useful to your work and what you might be interested in as well. Well, thanks, Nathan, again, for sharing that with us today. We're almost coming to the end of our show for today. Nathan, I was just going to quickly ask you, where can people find you if they want to further get in touch? I feel like you've shared so many cool things with us, and definitely I think some people might be interested in reaching out. How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, cool. Absolutely. Yeah. If anyone watching this program and listening to the program wants to get in touch, absolutely, please do. We can talk about some of these ideas in a bit more detail and get a bit more creative about some of this as well. So the best way to keep in touch is probably go to the website. It's the Why Conserve website, yconserve.com. Yeah, simple to remember, simple to pass on. And on that website, you'll find a contact link. It's up in the top bar. You can find just a link there to directly contact me. There's also LinkedIn. If anyone's on LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. So we can connect there and have conversation in a more kind of text-based way there on LinkedIn. So when it comes to the website, like you say, there's probably people watching this show who are watching this show, and they've got some new ideas, and they want to get a bit more involved. And so I'd just like to quickly highlight a couple of points about the Why Conserve website. So first is the action stories. So yeah, if you have done something that you're really proud of in your community, please do send me that story on the page, the action story page, and we can get that story published. Like I say, we can get some likes. Then the second part is about resources. We've discussed many things today. And yeah, I've got a few new ideas as well. So I will do my best to get any resources related with today's show. I'll get those all up online so people can have a look. And this is for teachers, any students, and anyone who wants to learn. I can get those resources up online. To make sure you don't miss out on any resource, on the website at the bottom, there's a box for an email. So you can sign up to a mailing list as well. So I'll send out any news there. There is actually a new section coming up as well, which is how can I help? Because I think so many people want to help. They want to do something very positive for the environment, but we're not always sure what we can do and how we can make a difference. So the idea is you tell us what you want to help and where, and we'll find a conservation expert who can help you and point you in the right direction. So absolutely, if you've got any questions or any ideas, definitely do contact me. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you've got any action stories, send them to me as well. And if you've got a song, yeah, go for it. Yeah, thanks very much, John, and everybody joining with this session. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nathan. We're at the end of our Make We Talk About the Environment show, and I would love to thank Nathan again for sharing your knowledge and experiences with us today. And thanks to our audience as well for taking your time to watch this show. We'll see you next time. Have a good week, everyone, and stay safe. Thank you.
For Sierra Leoneans, now and in the future.